of you who are here for the first time, let me introduce what Baatein is. Baatein is the National Institute of Design's unique interactive platform where we have conversations about design, environment, society, and everything in between. So, having experienced the fan base Isha has at NID, I don't think Isha needs any introduction, but let me introduce Isha to you briefly. So, Isha Pimpalkhare is a textile practitioner who situates her practice at the convergence of art and design. She focuses on creating emotive and engaging tactile environments. Having recently graduated with a master's in textiles and mixed media from the Royal College of Art London, her time at RCA helped her develop a strong identity and methodology for her practice with a keen interest in the impact of materiality of everyday lives. So prior to this, she has completed her bachelor's in textile design at the National Institute of Design, Ahmedabad. Welcome to Bati Isha.
Thanks a lot.
So, starting, how is everything at your place and where are you situated right now?
Yeah, so lately I've been in Pune. I got married very recently, so now I am divided between Pune and Delhi for a while. So, but most of my base is in Pune, so I generally work out of Pune a lot more. And yeah, it's been about a year and a half. I think I came back. I finished my master's at a time when I think 6 months later COVID hit. So it's been pretty much quite a challenging time, I guess, for somebody like me as well, who's just started off. I mean, uh, After my undergrad, I did work for a little while, but then once you do your postgrad is when you really want to kind of hit it off and start working. But I think it's been challenging times. So I've been working out of home. I've got a space for myself, which is part of my house, but a little away from it. So I have a studio space set up there, and yeah, I've been working out of Pune, yes, for a while now.
I'm really happy that things worked out for you even during the pandemic. Um, Talking about your time before NID, how did you find out about design and how did you know that textile design uh, was your core discipline at NID?
So I had a cousin of mine. I mean, that's how you normally get to know about NID at that point in time, because design wasn't something that was part of our, I studied in a state board, so we didn't have a lot of
Right,
exposure to the arts per se. So I remember I have a cousin who is about 6 years elder to me, who was in NID at a time when I was probably around 12, 13 years old. And that's how I
right.
kind of got to know about it. And she was studying exhibition design at that point of time. So
Oh,
I was quite fascinated by like everything that she told me. And that's when I slowly started finding out more about it. And then I kind of made, I think by the time it was 10th and 11th and 12th, then you started having like more concrete ideas. Okay, that, this is something you want to pursue. But
right, right.
that's how I was introduced to it. And when it comes to textiles, I guess your foundation was pretty much for that, where you kind of looked at different disciplines. You had like a little bit of an introduction into each discipline to kind of understand,
Discipline.
yeah, what each one is. And I remember textiles is something that really stood out for me. And one of the reasons being that it was such a hands-on approach to your discipline. And I think that there's a very, very, I don't know, it's very intimate, it's very involved to be working with something like textiles. It's very physical, it's very tactile. And I think, these are just thoughts that I get hindsight now, because at that point of time, you're just interested by, at that point in time, it was more about like, for me, textiles was a very interesting mix of technique, like technique, reasoning, and creativity. There was not,
Right, right.
because you were working with the loom. It wasn't like you could just think up anything and make it. There was a little bit of science and maths involved over there, and I think that was a very interesting balance. And hindsight, like I said, I think about it now, and I realize that it being such a tactile medium, I think there's a very different kind of intimacy that you share with the medium, and I think that's what keeps you highly involved in working with it as well. So
Right, right. That was beautiful. So, could you tell us a bit about your life at NID and how it was different from RCA? This was like the most popular question in the question box.
Uh, yeah, so I think to begin with, I think NID and RCA happened at very different age groups. I mean, in the sense, NID was 18 to 22, whereas RCA was 25 to 27 years when I spent my time there. So I think NID in that sense was uh, largely contributed to my formative years and made me who I am in a lot of ways. It taught me a lot of life lessons. Of course, you're kind of um, introduced to something like design. You're introduced to something so different where there are no exams and there's juries and all of that, and a completely new world to look at. But I think when I look back now, I realize that it contributed largely to who I was. And the second thing that I think NID gave me was a very, very strong understanding of the discipline. I think textiles, uh, I think, is pretty much one of the best disciplines, in my opinion, that NID has to offer. And I think that it gave me like a solid foundation to kind of then jump off of. And then when I kind of compare it to RCA, RCA was, of course, it's a master's. It's a very, very different approach. It's almost like a 2 year, how do I say? It's almost like a residency, though it's not a residency, but it's almost
Yeah,
self-led in a lot of ways. Um, so there are no lectures or classes or courses as such, but you sort of start defining what the discipline means to you or what you want to do with the 2 years that you have. So I think RCA kind of puts you in a very different place where you start kind of defining what your practice is about. You start defining and thinking for yourself, okay, what does the work that I'm doing mean to me, or what does the work that I'm doing mean, I mean, for wherever that I'm situating it. And
right,
so you kind of start asking yourself larger questions about your practice, which you're not always capable of asking when you're at NID, because you're at a very young age. You're at an age where you're absorbing anyway a lot of different things that are going on. So I think
definitely.
that's probably the biggest thing that stood out for me between the two places, NID and RCA.
Right. So, a follow-up question for the question I asked before. I've seen many people worry about this and are very confused about how to proceed. So, this is especially for the people who want to do masters in abroad. So the question is, how did RCA help in your career, and do you think you've got your full value of your investment?
Um, uh, Honestly, like, that's a very difficult question to answer for anybody, I guess. I don't know,
Yeah.
unless for a couple of reasons for me, I'd say. Firstly, yes, it's a very valuable experiences that I personally had at RCA, and I think that
Right.
it's about meeting a lot of people. It's about understanding art and design in different contexts, and also that space and time that you give yourself when you put yourself in an educational institute to kind of go back to the grind, and you kind of go back to studying and analyzing your own work, and that puts you in a very different place. And I feel like RCA did a great job in for me in terms of you know, that independent thought process is so important. That independent, I mean, just kind of thinking for yourself as to what it is that you're doing, and kind of giving yourself that time to answer it over the 2 years that you have. I think that's very, very valuable. At the same time, when I compare it to the price that you're paying, yes, it's extremely stiff. And I think I chose to sort of take a more independent artistic direction with my work. So
Hmm. Right.
it's not definitely been where I've come back and I've started making my full bucks back and things like that. It's difficult. I agree. I'm not going to deny that. But it's also, I think you can play it smart as well. I think you can, couple of things I would always say is that have a very, very, you're paying a lot of money for a very finite time that you're going to spend at an institute. So I would
True.
always say, like, have a very, very defined idea as to what you want to achieve out of it. Because 2 years flies by. You don't want to waste your 1 year wondering, oh, what do I do? What am I doing? You don't want to be, you want to kind of dive straight in. And that's what a master's is really about. When you sort of have
Right.
have a basic idea of, okay, what do I want to achieve from this master, and then you go for it in those 2 years that you have. So I'd say that's number one. And number two, I would say that I mean, of course, there are scholarships. There is a lot of these things that you need to look into, and you need to kind of go looking for it, And unfortunately, India does not always offer as many scholarships, so which becomes a little bit of a deterring factor. But
Right.
have a strategy in place, like especially kind of also have that foresight as to what kind of a job you're looking for right after your master's, especially if you're looking for working abroad. Try and work in those directions. So while I'd say that it is a big investment, and it can be a very risky one, especially, I would say that if you have a plan in mind, if you have a very good direction of where you want to take your work, it's worth it. And you will figure it out. I mean, there are avenues, there are a lot. You'd be surprised, that, like, for example, the UK offers so many, like, right after your masters, the UK, I mean, offers so many of these various programs of extending your visa. It could be global talent, it could be whatnot. So it's also about, you might not have your answers on a platter, but it's also about
Mm-hmm.
going looking for these opportunities where you don't know where you would find them, and you can make it work out for you. So I'd say,
Right.
I don't know, I hope that answers the question, but yeah.
Yes, yes, that makes a lot of sense. Yes. So could you introduce what mixed media means for the audience we have today? And when and where did you realize the scope in it?
Mixed media is basically, I mean, to my understanding, it's a very, very open-ended approach to textiles. It's not rooted in weaving or knitting or printing, really, but it's more of a interdisciplinary approach, if you can say so,
Right.
where you're working with textiles in combination with a lot of different processes or materials, for that matter. So that's pretty much what mixed media is, and that was my understanding. I mean, I did mixed media as a specialization at RCA, so that even I got introduced to this concept when I started applying. So I think what drew me to that was, um, I don't know. Personally, I was when I was applying for my masters, I was at a place where I was still not sure what direction I'm going. Somewhere I didn't find what I mean what I was doing very challenging or inspiring. And I felt like mixed media sort of opened this entire new world up for me, because it was suddenly, it was almost like you define what you want to do. Of course, mixed media for me would still mean to be a textile led approach, because my foundation and my understanding and my strongest understanding is textiles. So my approach to mixed media is still from a textile point of view, but then it opens you up as to working with different things, and then you situate them in different contexts. And so I think that was what was exciting about it, like like the endless possibilities of it all. So um so that's what essentially it is. So you're not specializing in, like, now for example, you have a course like weaving in RCA, so you're not specializing in weaving as such, but you're specializing in something like mixed media. So
Everything.
you might come out being like creating a collection which is a mix of textiles and wood, or whatever it is that you want it to be. So but that's the direction of the course. So I hope that kind of answers the question. And did you have another
Yeah, yeah.
question?
Yeah, I've asked when did you realize the scope in it? Like at which point of your life?
um I think I've always believed in a very collaborative sort of approach to work. I've always believed that textiles, and I've always been interested a lot more in where textile can exist, or textiles knowledge and thinking can exist beyond your defined realms, right? Which is interiors and fashion and your export houses. So I think that's something that has always been of a great interest to me. And also, right before I did my master's, I was working at a studio called Baatein in Bangalore. And that was also a multidisciplinary kind of a studio. So we had textile designers, graphic designers, exhibition designers, all working in the same space. And though we worked on like different projects at times, we worked on the same project. So that was a very like that was probably my first experience where I was working with in combination with some other designer from another discipline. And I
Discipline.
think that was quite exciting because what came out of it was always something very new, something very exciting. So I think that's where it started. And then I think the course kind of helped me find the perfect opportunity to sort of take it forward. So yeah.
Oh, that's
Mhm.
interesting. So the next question is along the same lines. So many of the audience has asked, what is your inspiration for your kinetic textiles, and where did you start it? At NID or did you start it at RC?
Yeah, so I started most all my kinetic work in RC, in fact, and
Okay.
I think the story behind working with motors was not. It was more about creating a feeling. Um, so there's something called the biophilia hypothesis, which is basically a hypothesis that we as humans have a sort of innate affiliation to nature. And I think that was, I mean, this was more of a conceptual thought that I had in my mind as to how we sort of have removed ourselves over years and years from our natural habitats, which used to be like, the natural surroundings, and we've kind of situated
Right.
ourselves now in these kind of spaces where materials are more like objects. They don't really have they have a functional value, but how much do they have a responsive or an emotive value, right? So
Correct.
it was sort of a mix of a lot of these thoughts where I started thinking about, okay, how what kind of an effect does textiles play in space? What kind of a effect does it have on your mind or your body? Um, so that's where I started thinking about, okay, what if I create something like a breathing textiles? You're essentially bringing something which is so natural indoors onto a material environment, right? So that's
Correct.
where it all started, and then it kind of led to, okay, how do I achieve what I'm trying to achieve? I want to make something that's moving, and origami was something that I think ever since I was a child, I used to work with origami, and I did some of it before NID. I did some origami, and I remember I did some heat setting with fabric and with origami folds and stuff, even in NID. And origami kind of fit right into this thought where I was trying to create something that was expanding and contracting, and
Yes.
origami kind of literally gives you that what you're looking for, where you can expand a structure and collapse a structure. So then it was from then on, it was really about how do I create something on fabric? I mean, create these structures on fabric. How can and then it's more about like refining that idea, right? Then you're trying to work with different kinds of fabrics. You're trying to see, okay, how much strength does this particular fabric have for me to create that kind of movement that I'm looking for? And then again, there was the other side of working with kinetics, which was motors and all of these things, which I had completely no knowledge about. And that's when I sort of reached out to somebody, one of my school friends, who's a hardware guy. And I did like, I mean, he started with helping me with basics as to understanding, okay, how I can work with motors, what I need, how do I do like basic programming and things like that. So it was reaching out and tapping into like different resources as well, because obviously I didn't have all the knowledge that I needed. So
Right.
so yeah, it was more of like, it was more of a process driven thing. It never really started with, oh, I want to combine motors and textiles. It was more about, acha, how do I do this? And then this idea of motors came in, and then I was like, okay, how do I make this work now? So then I had to kind of start reading and learning about like basic stuff about how, and then it was about, okay, how do I connect the motor component to the textile component? And then it's kind of been going on since then. So that's how I think kinetic stuff started for me.
Right, right. I think now is the perfect time to show your work to the audience.
Yeah, for
Can
sure.
we do that? Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm going to be like showing just like quick stuff that actually I've been working
Yeah.
on at the moment. I think I'll start with some textile stuff. So I just wanted to kind of start with like showing how I work with kinetic textiles generally. So it always starts with working with origami on paper because it's the easiest way to create what you're wanting to create and you get a quick mock-up out of it. And
Right.
then once you sort of know how you're gonna do whatever it is supposed to be doing, you've kind of cracked it on paper, I think then you sort of start moving towards fabric with it. These are just different examples that I've put together. So it's been a lot of experimenting really for me where I kind of work with different fabrics. This was this reflective fabric that I pleated. Um, and then there was
So
this
this is
other fabric.
polyester, right?
Yeah, all of these are polyesters. So obviously,
Okay.
heat setting cannot work on natural fibers. If you want to
Right.
build in that memory, you always need polyesters. So yeah, so this was that, and then I kind of always look at new fabrics and see how I can. So this is actually a bonded fabric. So what I realize is that a lot of times I need structure, which I don't always get on the fabric that I'm working with. So you have these kind of this is double-sided bonding. I'm sure everybody must be knowing about it. So this is stuff that I generally end up using to kind of create my structures if I think I want to give it more strength. If I want to give it more strength than this, like it's a little flimsy still. So then I'll,
Right.
slap on another layer. And then a lot of times it's about kind of converting the paper example onto fabric then. So then it's about creating those folds on fabric and all of that. Sometimes I even use what do you call it? This is the stuff you use for your collars and stuff to make your collars stiff, bakram. So
Right. Right.
sometimes you want to use so I always kind of depend on a lot of these things also to kind of make my structure stronger. This is another
Right.
example of you know again a lot of origami stuff. And then I generally
So
move
you
on.
use paper as a mold on textile and then sort of
Yeah. So
collapse it, right? Yeah.
correct, correct. So that's how you kind of sandwich it in the middle and then you create your structure. And then I normally end up creating these small mock-ups generally because you don't want to, immediately go big with your idea. You want to sort of test it out. You want to figure out how it's going to all connect to one another, how it's going to move, what do you want it to do. So generally it kind of moves on to this scale, still like a desktop size of um um, mock up before I kind of move to like a larger one. And
Right.
so right now I'm just going to be quickly, and then you move on to something bigger, like this, for example, where this is a more
Hmm.
sort of finished product. So you kind of so it's always like a step by step process. I mean, anyone would follow, right? Well, when you make like a small model first and then move on to making something much more larger. And this is another mock-up. So this is, I mean, like I told you, I'm kind of learning on the go a lot of times, and this is as new of a field for me as well because I've spent very little time working with kinetics still. So
Right. Hmm.
now I'm into kind of building structures these days. So initially I used to use a lot of nylon wires and threads to connect everything. But now I
Right.
realize I want to make something a lot more sturdier, a lot more stronger. So I'm now kind of working towards, and I kind of mock prototype kind of tiny things with like armature wires and things like that.
Oh wow.
I had to kind of figure out how I can get a similar mechanism that I use for threads onto a metallic with like metal rods, so that it kind of makes the structure stronger and it'll make it more long lasting and things like that. And these are again like different jigs that I work with. Like I told you, I work with my friend a lot. So this is something
Hmm.
that we came up very recently. So I'm sure everybody's seen this iris, right? So
Yeah. Hmm.
so we kind of 3D printed it, and then now we're trying to figure out ways as to how we can integrate this with fabric, and what kind of movements will that create. and things like that.
Right.
And then I'm just showing you like really random things, but this is again like
Yeah.
this is your motor, right? This is your motor. But now
Yeah.
this is an example of like I mean you start thinking about so many things after a point, right? When you start doing one thing, this is about how can you convert like a circular motion into a linear motion, right? So your motor
Oh,
generally has a circular motion. So how do you convert that to a linear motion? And then what kind of opportunities does that kind of provide you with suddenly? So this is again like a quick 3D printed mock-up that he did for me. And then now I will be kind of taking it forward and working with textiles with it and, you know. And more recently, I've gotten quite interested in lighting. So this is something I've been working on where I've been introducing light with textiles. So I mean,
wow.
these are potential like project opportunities. So a lot of these start off as just like ideas and thoughts that I keep getting, and then you want to plug all your wires together and see how that looks like. And
Yeah.
so this is that. And more recently, I've been also interested in like magnets. So magnets
Ooh.
also create motion, right? So
Right.
what if you were to sort of integrate motors and magnets, right? So what kind of motion
Right.
would that create? So this is just my hand moving. Sorry, my hand move. So this is a piece of magnet here that I have, and there's a magnet attached to the base there. So
Wow.
so these are just like different ideas that I sort of constantly work with. This is something else. So I've been working a lot with um, metal wires lately. So I've been creating these different kinds of structures with it and hoping to create like an installation with it. So then again, like
Right.
it's a lot of exploration process because you work with like different materials and see if I create this, it kind of leaves the memory of that what I
Oh,
did. And then again, it's like a lot of, so this has been something that's been on my mind lately. I kind of try and look for like interesting materials. This is a stainless steel mesh, so which is also quite
right.
interesting. So so yeah, it's a lot of like experimenting and
Yeah.
yeah, experimenting that I do on the side because something or the other leads to something else, and then you have something that you want to work with. And now I'd like to show you some of my larger. These are very, very recent actually. So my room's
Oh,
really tiny,
oh
so
my
you might
God.
not be able. So these are some new art pieces that I've been working on,
Wow.
and I just got them
Amazing.
framed recently. This is I don't know if you can see all of them, but yeah, so I've kind of gotten into a phase where I want to work on a very large scale. Like last couple of months, I was feeling that small canvases were very restricting for some reason. So I did like a couple of pieces which turned out to be like these really massive size pieces. Um, and I can show you close-ups. This is another piece. One sec. Uh, no, these
So this is
wires are
wires and
for something
fabric.
else. Sorry.
Oh, okay.
This is only fabric. This is only fabric. So if you see, this is
Oh,
all fabric, and these threads kind of hold the whole thing together. So it's completely
right.
like transparent, like it's completely see-through in places. So this one piece. So there are like
Wow.
two layers here. And this one's actually like a map. One sec, let me see if I can show it to you properly.
Yeah.
Okay. This one's like a massive wave that I wanted to create. So I don't know if you can see it. Can you see that it's a massive wave?
Oh. Yeah, 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 yeah. Like the Kawasaki wave, right? Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
similar to that one. Yeah. So, so yeah. And then it's a fun process, like you kind of experiment with different kinds of wood also. So in the process, I realized that you kind of learn about so many different materials. And, we were trying to figure out ways like this time of framing it and how you can frame it differently each time. And then
Right.
you kind of work with different kinds of wood finishes and wood grains. And so I think that's a process that I really enjoy, where I get to learn about new materials as well and things like that. So yeah, this one was another piece, but I don't know how I feel about it. So yeah, sometimes that
Yeah,
happens as well, like you sketch out an idea and then you're like, okay, let me see how it looks on fabric, because you're not going to know unless you do it. So sometimes that happens too, where I end up creating something which you have no idea how you feel about, and then
that's true.
it kind of goes to the back of your all your work maybe, and maybe it comes out again later. But yeah. Somebody is asking for a closer look of the frame. Is that,
Yeah.
yeah. So that's your frame. Normally I work with like solid wood. So this is teak wood. Um, this one, I wanted to work with Burma teak this time. So I got like a nice Burma teak frame made. Um, so yeah, this is that.
So the next question is, what is the first step when you start any kind of a project, when you freelance or when you're in the industry? So this is more of a freelance based question.
So generally, I try to get as much information as I can from my client to begin with, because a lot of times clients come with like a very, I mean, sometimes they know what they want, but a lot of times they don't know what they want. So
Right.
I think the number one step for me is always like I try and kind of get more information out of them. If they're looking for something specific, I'm always wanting to I kind of nudge them to write what they're looking for, or give me a written brief and things like that, because that's a very important step, I feel, because you don't want to be going in two different directions with your work, where your client is thinking one and you're thinking the other. So generally it always begins with like speaking to the client more in depth. And then
Right.
it's a lot of times you realize that your ideas and thoughts start forming when you are speaking to them, and that's a lot of times the best way to even conceptualize and ideate also, when you're talking to them, because you have ideas coming up, and then you kind of put it down on paper and then you share it with them. Then there's a little bit of back and forth generally, and that back and forth always goes on till the end of the project. So yeah, that's pretty much how I go about it. And yeah, always, but yeah, it's great to understand your client in depth before beginning the project.
Definitely. I think a lot of times they come up with a vague brief and they
Yeah,
expect a lot from you, and then yeah.
yeah.
So the next question, how do your future plans look like? And are you planning to explore other avenues or stick to kinetics, textiles, and dive further into it?
Okay. So I'm in a very like right now I'm in a very transitional phase. So I will be moving to Germany in a couple of months, and it's quite uh, yeah. There's a lot of thoughts that are going on in my head also as to what direction I should take, and because as easy and as I don't know, possible it is to have a freelance practice, independent practice in India, it can get difficult to have that independent practice abroad. And I think something that I'm also learning is that when you're having an independent practice, it's always important to have certain anchors which become more of your consistent money flowing projects. So it's always good to have. And at the place where I am at right now, what I'm trying to achieve is kind of get that nice balance between having a good number of freelance projects coming my way, so very like commercial projects coming my way, and mostly those are all textile projects. They could be commissions at times, they could be installations at times, they could be like very random, like I did I did some flowers for a client recently. So very, very like
Right.
random, but then you kind of find your scope within it. You see what you can do with it. And if it's something interesting, I take it up. So that's something that I want to kind of push forward, where I kind of have that consistent freelance practice going on. And then on the other side, I am interested in taking a more artistic direction with my work as well. So I would want to get into exhibiting more and creating work for myself, which then I can exhibit in spaces, which could be kinetic installations, or it could be these textile pieces, because uh, I mean, for the kinetic stuff, as fun as it is to kind of experiment with it, the minute you want to
Right.
go large with it, it involves a lot of uh, I mean, funds that you need. So because of that, it's very important that I mean, it's great when you can get these projects through clients, because then that gives you the opportunity to kind of put out some really, fun work that I really enjoy doing. And then you kind of find ways to fund your independent projects as well. So that's what I'm kind of hoping for at the moment.
Right. Right. That makes sense. So the next question is a fun question. So who was your favorite faculty member at NID, and who is your biggest inspiration?
Uh, okay, I think I don't have like one favorite, but I think I really respected Aditi, Aditi Ranjan for uh, just her mind. She had a very, very like perceptive mind, very now that I think of a lot of advice she gave me at that point of time, or stuff she asked me to do and change in my, certain projects. It's really kind of it's really like really intelligent stuff. So I think she's
Right.
somebody that I really admire. And another one is Suresh was also somebody that I used to really look up to. I think so. I think chosen Suresh for my, though he was not from textiles, I'd chosen him to be my guide for my final project. And that's when I kind of interacted with him the most. And it's quite interesting always, because we never spoke about the project. We spoke about everything else. But that's how it always was with Suresh. So yeah, it was. And just like yeah, these two people I'd say had like an impact on, yeah.
Right. That's very touching. So apart from your vocation, what do you do as a hobby? Apart from your kinetic textiles or your freelance?
I'm pretty like normal otherwise, apart from my so I don't unfortunately, to my I think dismay, I don't have a very strong, like, people have learned some form of instrument. That I learned one instrument, but then I gave it up at a young age. And then but I really enjoy the outdoors. I always enjoy going for a hike, going for I don't know, a trek, or just like I'm consistent. Like I enjoy doing the outdoor activities in general, where anything related to going outdoors is something that I really enjoy. Otherwise, what I do in my free time is pretty much very like everyday things.
Yeah. So let's take up few questions which we got from audience. So what motivates you to keep going, especially in the creative field where the path isn't carved out?
I think um, I think the biggest motivation is always that um, you have an entire blank canvas to work with always. You can always have your freelance projects going on, or not have anything going on, but there's always so much opportunity to create. There's just so much opportunity to um, think and make new things. And um, I think that design and art is one of those fields, right, where it allows you to think about so many different aspects. When you think of something that you're making, you're thinking about so many things, the material, you're thinking about where it
Right.
can situate itself, you're thinking about the people who might be interested in this, or so there's a lot of problem solving always in something like what we do, and that always keeps you so engaged, right? And becomes a highly motivational factor always when it comes to working, because when you look at anything, if whatever you create, you can ask yourself 1,000 questions and solve all those 1,000 questions. So you can kind of keep yourself motivated, keep kind of refining what you're doing, and I think that's something that's always very engaging, I think.
Right. So there's a very interesting question. Do you think India is a correct market for your kind of design language?
Um, um, I don't know, but I think it's not, I mean, what I do is not very traditional for sure. It's difficult getting projects where you can actually do something a lot more experimental, and so yeah, India is a tough market in that sense, but I also feel that there is ample opportunity. So I remember the first time we did a kinetic installation, which was about a year and a half ago in Delhi. I remember the clients were completely apprehensive about it because they didn't know what to expect. They didn't know what it was going to be like. So I think
Right.
it's a lot of convincing the people as well. You're convincing your client as well as to what you're creating, and that what you're creating is of substance. So though I feel that yes, I'm not doing something that's very mainstream. I do find it difficult at times also to find avenues to actually be doing the work that I genuinely love, and finding the market for it. But you have to kind of keep finding ways, because there's a market for everything. How big is debatable, but there's a market for everything for sure. It's just about like going around your ways and networking, finding the right audience, building portfolios in the right way, sending out emails, sharing your work. Like, I think there's a lot of these things also which can help you get places.
Right. Right. Prabsimar Kaur asks, what, according to you, can be the future if textile design in interior slash space designing?
um i think I think there's this whole concept of technology being more tactile, and technology being more um, um, yeah, I think people want to look at more softer technology, which is more integrated into things and things like that. So when I think about textiles, I feel like that's a great place for, I mean, where textile is going anyway, right? Even when you talk about smart houses, smart living, everything's about Wi-Fi and Bluetooth and all of these things now,
Right.
right? So and what you're also trying to do is make technology invisible around you. You don't want to see wires anymore. You don't want to see devices anymore. Everything you want it to be like well fabricated, like a good looking piece of furniture. So I think textiles has a massive role to play in those kind of ways, and where it is, the material is so aesthetically driven as well, and it has a great opportunity to combine with tech, right? So it's, I mean, people are doing all sorts of things today, and I feel like that's really going to get going. Like, I mean, that's where I would also like to go eventually with my work also, maybe in some capacity, where you're talking about um, technology that's embedded in smart houses, which is, and if you'll see, you'll be you I mean, you notice around you in your houses there's so much textile everywhere, right? So it's got a great,
Right.
like, I think that's where it's definitely going to, in my opinion.
Right. While at NID, what was your one favorite activity to pursue?
I think
And one thing you miss about NID also.
I'd say, like, just to kind of, you have like a long day, in at the studio, and then you walk back to your hostel, and then there's a completely new world at the BBC and at the night mess, and then that space to completely unwind. And I think that's something I really miss. I think it was great to come back to like such a, like, you, all your friends and everyone used to be hanging out late at night. So I think it was a great way to end the day, where you kind of really unwind and just like hang out and chill out. And I think that's something I really miss about NID. Just like that whole sense of community, which is
Right, right.
great to have. So I think that's something I really miss. And yeah, it's nice. I mean, it's nice though. I mean, the friends you have in NID are probably the ones that stay with you. So, but you miss the place a lot. So,
Right. So yeah, how different is textile designing in NID from any other college in India?
um, I don't know. I haven't really spoken about this to anybody from any other institute in India, really,
Institute.
about textiles. But I'm guessing, I mean, so I wouldn't know how to answer that question really, but what I can say about, I think everyone who's in NID on the chat today already knows that Textiles has a really good infrastructure. I think that's something that's really great. And all the knowledge that all of these kakas used to have, who used to help us with all our weaving, I mean, that's the knowledge that was literally disposable, like at your service everywhere. So I think that's something that's really special about NID, just the entire infrastructure of your print studios, your weaving studios, and your dyeing studios, and all of that. So I think that's something that's really special. I wouldn't know about other colleges really, because I haven't been to any to kind of say. But yeah,
I agree. The infrastructure at NID is pretty huge in terms of textiles.
yeah,
I've seen it.
yeah.
Yeah. Um, can you tell us about one incident that has proved to be a deciding factor in your professional curve?
Um, can't think of any. But I think I would definitely say that, like, I don't have an incident in mind, but I think when I think about my 2 years at RCA and the kind of time I spent, um, I think that's been invaluable for me. Um, it's really changed me in a lot of ways. It's made me very focused and very sure about what I want to do with my work. And I think that's been the biggest takeaway for me, because that sense of feeling lost, right, is so common in your when you're having a creative practice. It's very common to feel lost. Everybody feels lost. Everybody, sometimes you wonder, okay, what am I doing? Where am I going? What am I achieving? So I feel like those 2 years where I really spend time, and it's such a simple process. You're just spending time with yourself in a studio space, thinking about your work and doing your work. Nobody is coming and telling you what to do. But that's when uh, you start experimenting in so many directions. So I think that's helped me, and I think that's been a big turning, like a big turning point for me. um I mean, I don't know how I'd answer this question 10 years later, when I look back. But right now, at least, I feel very focused and very sure about what direction I want to take my work in. So, which has
Right,
been a big, I think it's something really big that I got from my master's. So I would say that that's been a big turning point.
right. So, what do you feel about the creative freedom compared to Indian and international college? This is a question from one of the audience.
Uh, um, I think that if you were given the kind of, I mean, this is again my opinion, but I think that if you were given the kind of freedom of thought and action towards your discipline, the kind you got at RCA, I don't know how well we would have been able to handle it at our age in NID on an undergrad course. I think at that age, it's good to have structure to your courses. It's good to have a very solid structure also, because at that age we don't necessarily know what we want. Sometimes we do, which is great. But if you ask me, had I been given the kind of freedom I had on my master's, maybe I would have ended up in a bigger mess, you know. So I do feel that I think that freedom of thought, I mean, freedom of like, I don't know, of not having courses or defining your projects for yourself or doing time management. Um, I often ask myself, what if I would have gotten that kind of time in NID, you know? But I do feel that maybe it wouldn't have been the smartest thing. So I
Best.
think it's it's uh, it's good to have both. It's good to have. I think that the if you can handle that kind of freedom of because it's very easy to get lost as well if you don't have structure. You can feel very lost. You can keep pondering for very long as to what you want to do. But I think at an age when you know what it is that you want out of your academic career, um,
Right.
uh, it's great to have that freedom. But I just doubt whether you come with that kind of focus when you come to NID at the age of 18. I wonder. So.
Yeah, I think us coming out for say 12th grade and directly coming to NID and then having some structure will do some good to us, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's just a personal opinion. I mean, I think there are a lot of educational formats that exist and should exist, and I think you would have a very different learning curve if you were to be in that. But I think you can't ever answer that question unless you've done it yourself, you know, unless you've
True, true.
gotten, yeah.
So we'll take in a couple of more questions. How important do you think internships are for college students, or should we rather build our portfolio in the meantime?
No, I think working with people, working with industry is very important. I think it gives you a massive reality check, because it's not easy. It's not you're always going to be presented with opportunities where you'd be like, shit, I never thought I'd land up in this situation, and you'll always be there. So I think it's very important to get industry experience. Because I think it just prepares you for all kinds of things, you know, because you'll be surprised at the kind of different clients and different people that you interact with when you start working independently, because then that's when you actually start having your client discussions, you know, where you're leading the client discussion. So I think it's always good to I wouldn't ever advise otherwise to not do an internship.
Right, that makes sense. Last question. Good books which highlight textiles of India, or any book suggestions related to textiles?
Any book suggestions, read? There is a book called I don't know. It's not specifically related to textiles of India, but there's an interesting book called The Craft Reader, which is and it's a short book of different essays by different practitioners from all over the world, actually. So I feel like those are some really good. There are some really good books by that author. I forget his name. Something Adamson, I think. So he has written a couple of books as well on craft and on the idea of a maker. And those have been really interesting books for me to read. So I'm not very heavy into Indian textiles as such. I mean, I don't personally also work so much with Indian textiles, but um, craft has been has been a topic of interest to me, and like, you know, crafts people. So he's written a lot of interesting books on craft and communities, and in this particular book called The Craft Reader is definitely worth a read because it's a collection of different essays. So that's something that comes from the top of my head, but if I think of any more, I'll kind of write to you about it.
Yeah, yeah, sure, sure. So last question. Do you have any tips and suggestions for the aspiring designers from India, from anywhere?
Um, I would say that I think always, I mean, this is something that I feel always has helped me to always have a personal practice. You might have projects you'll be doing for clients, you'll be doing projects for your classes and courses and everything. But I think it's always important to have a personal sketchbook, a personal set of projects that you do for yourself, uh, of related to things that interest you. So having a personal practice going in parallel to your professional practice or your academic practice is very has been very I don't know, helpful for me. And I would always I'd always I don't know, recommend and advise anybody to do that. So yeah.
Right. That's wonderful. So, we have come to the end of the session. So, thank you for sharing your insights, and we really appreciate for your time. And hoping to have a session with you on campus again in
Yes.
Audi with everyone.
Thank you so
Thank
much
you
for
so much,
having
Isha.
me, and it's been really nice. It's always really nice. This is my first time I'm connecting back to NID in some format, so it's really nice.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. Thanks a lot. Thanks for your time.
Bye, guys. See you.
Bye.